Hello, my name is Vojtěch Bulant. I work in ACTUM as a front-end developer. So, if you want, you can reach me at my Metro section of ACTUM Office. And today I'm gonna talk about Scalable CSS. What it is, what we messed up in the past regarding Scalable CSS, which tools and methodologies we can use today to improve our practice, and how to put it together in the present. So a little story about CSS. What is CSS? Just for those who may not know, it's an abbreviation of cascading style sheets. It's a very simple language. It helps us define appearance of web pages. So it's a basic building block of every web page, and we use it a lot in front-end development. It has a steep learning curve, but it's really hard to master. And it's not there for a long time, for a very long time, so its best practices are still being evaluated. I will show you some of those. So how does it look actually in the code? You can see some basic HTML and its style. The style is within the style section, in a style element, and HTML is below. On the right you can see an example of a page rendered from the source on the left. And CSS is just a composition of selector, property, and value. So we have a P, which is a selector in the style section. So it targets our paragraph. This is an element selector. Then in curly brackets we have a rule set, which consists of properties and their values. So we have font weight and color properties, and their respective values of bold and some red. On the example you can see that actually this works. So a simple composition of selector, property, and value. Now, I think most important feature regarding scalability in CSS is cascade. What it is? Again, we have a simple example and the web page on the right. Now imagine we want to add another rule to the style section. If we add the same rule with a different value, you can see that the message is now black. Because in cascade, the order has importance. The last one will always win in this example. Likewise, if we add another one, again same one, just different value, it will win. So this is an order rule of cascade. Then if we start over again and add another one on the top, now why does it work? Because it's not the last one, right? But
yeah, hash. Okay. Sorry.
But this is a class selector, and class selector has bigger priority than element selector. You can see that it is a .msg, and in HTML it is a class equals msg, so it targets our paragraph, and it has bigger priority than the element selector, so it wins. Then again, if you want to add another one, in this case ID selector, again it wins because it has even bigger priority than class selector and of course than element selector. So this was priority rule of cascade. So this is CSS in a nutshell. Now that we know what CSS is, what is scalable CSS then? It is well structured, for example by media, screen, projection, print, and so on. It can be structured by typography, for example, some text elements, maybe tables, buttons, forms, and so on, or by components, footer, sidebar, maybe comment form, and so on. So it is well structured to be reusable, to be scalable, sorry. It is also reusable to be scalable, which means it is easy to understand. So maybe a new employee will come to the company, and for sure we want him to quickly adapt to the to our practice, to our code base, to be able to quickly extend our CSS and start working with it and extend it. So it should definitely be reusable to be scalable. Third, it should be performant to be scalable, which means it should be well written and compact. So you may know the words "don't repeat yourself" and "keep it short and simple." So well written and compact to be performant and therefore scalable. And last one, it should be maintainable to be scalable, which means well structured again, reusable again, and documented. So we have no bug fixes in the code, and the code is quickly adaptable for new employees. And even we should have a documentation for the people outside of the project so that we can show them our components right away in the documentation. So those was our 4 pillars of Scalable CSS: well structure, reusability, performance, and maintainability or documentation. Our 4 pillars of Scalable CSS. Now I would like you to walk you through a history of CSS. It's turned out that we have not been doing CSS that scalable in the past. So let me show you why. Do you know the guy on the picture?
Yeah.
Sorry? No, it's not Tolstoy. I've been waiting for this answer. No, it is not Karl Marx. Yeah, it is Charles Darwin. He was a naturalist, biologist, whatever. He was famous for his theory of evolution. And why am I mentioning him here in CSS talk? It is because I think that we are in the middle of a similar evolution in the means of front-end development. It all started with CSS and Garden, right? Does anyone know CSS and Garden? Okay, so yeah, now we will know. CSS and Garden is a famous project by Dave Shea. Its purpose was to showcase richness of CSS, that you can style any HTML you want just using CSS without touching HTML, actually. So the CSS and Garden wanted you to download its HTML, then use just CSS to style its HTML, and then upload it again on the Zengarden, on the cssandgarden.com. And if you were lucky, you got showcased there, your design. So its goal was to emphasize that we should do pure semantic HTML, set in stone, then use just CSS to style it, but not touch it again, not touch HTML again. But it turned out this didn't scale. So the relationship was like this: HTML first, CSS second. Okay, didn't scale. Regarding our first pillar of Scalable CSS, structure, we have been writing long monolithic style sheets, as you can see. The long noodle on the left is our style sheet. It was. So imagine you want to look there something up, maybe a button, some selector, rule, color. It was really difficult. But yeah, we have been able to work like that somehow. But we don't want to work like that no longer. And also, we have been doing a lot of hacks for browser differences. For example, double margin bug for IE6, in IE6, and it's fixed there. This didn't scale either, because we just thrown these in our style sheets, and then never touched them again. So then they might be there forever on some websites. And at the time, Microsoft stated that IE6 is good enough and that they won't develop another browser. So we thought we are stuck there forever. There were hard-coded values everywhere. You see, 20 pixels there, 30 pixels here, lots of repetitions, no variables. But yeah, at the time, we had no choice. We had to do it like this. We had no preprocessors to help us. So lots of hard-coded values everywhere in our style sheets. Then suddenly media queries came in, and the whole mobile responsive design revolution with them. So we had no choice but pick them and throw them in our code base and add even more complexity to our code, still without preprocessors and variables. This was us back then, doing our spaghetti code. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, as you can see. So this was structure back then. Now regarding reusability, our second pillar of Scalable CSS, consider this simple example. We have an article with its content and H3 headline. Now imagine we want to style it using CSS. In the means of the old school approach, HTML first, CSS second, right? Remember Zen Garden? You could do it like this. Just tightly couple CSS with HTML, with its structure, and it works. We have been taught to do so like this. So this is, remember Cascade from this. Now I want you to remember this quote by Adam Morse. After countless implementations of CSS systems that broke down and became difficult to maintain as apps and teams grew larger, I found I want little to no part of the Cascades features. So why is that? We have been taught to use Cascade extensively by Zen Garden and so on, but it turns out it doesn't work, and the best developers in our community even don't like it. Why is that? What's wrong with the Cascade? Can you guess what's wrong with this?
Oh, it's not maintainable, right? If you just change something, change one class, everything fall apart.
Exactly, that's it. Consider you want to reuse the CSS declaration for another part of our code somewhere, for other heading. You simply can't because it's coupled with our HTML. It's a copy of structure on the example, so it's not reusable. And also it's really hard to override. Because imagine you want to add, for example, margin of 5 pixels instead of 0 to another heading of the site. What can you do? You can either add another class or add an ID to increase the priority of the selector, to override the previous one. Or, for sure, you can use important keyword, famous one, to override it as well. But this still didn't scale. Okay? So this was our reusability back then. Now to the performance in those times. It turned out that poor reusability led us to poor performance. So yeah, with poor reusability, we got poor performance for free. But then again, keep it easy, please, because back then we had no other choice, and it was considered best practice like this. So yeah. Again, our example. Let's consider it from perspective of the browser performance, browser rendering performance. How does it work for the browser? Browser starts on the right, with the rightmost selector, and tries to look it up into HTML while rendering. Then, if it's present in HTML, it goes further. it tries to find its parent of content, the class of content. Then, if it still exists, it goes even further to the last one, article, and if it exists, it will apply the value to the desired element, to the found element or elements. So you can see it's quite a lot of steps for the browser. In the practice, it gets even worse with more complex selectors, as you can see. So this didn't scale either. In the end, our website's performance looked like this. Poor overloaded vehicle. Okay. Now our fourth pillar of reusable and scalable CSS, documentation. Well, CSS is simple, right? No need to document it. It's off. Style guides were not the thing back then. We had no tools for generating style guides, for generating proper documentation back then. And most importantly, our monolithic bloated code was hard to document. Imagine you want to document something which is wrong. Doesn't make sense, okay? But actually we did document our CSS hacks, at least. So this was documentation with the means of CSS scalability. In the end, our scalability, the whole, looked like this. Without structure, reusability, performance, and documentation, there is no scalability. That was me trying to do CSS at scale back then. Yeah, 8 hours, 16, and often it ended like this. A lot of fun back then. Can we do better? Yeah, of course. I think we can. We just need to leverage some tools, methodologies, and better practices to improve our CSS. First of them is atomic design. It's not a rocket science, it's just a methodology which tells us how to build our UIs, our websites, out of reusable components. Okay? It's very simple. It can be just like on the example, from left to right. This time, it's atoms, molecules, organisms, and pages. You see atomic design. So you have the simplest, the most simple entities, atoms, which can be composed into molecules. Molecules can be then composed into organisms, and finally, we can build a whole page out of the organisms. It may sound a bit chaotic maybe, but let me show you an example. So let's start with an atom, the simplest entity. This is an atom, it's from ACTUM Web, the navigation item, and it's an atom. Most simple entity. Then we can compose atoms into molecules. So molecule is a composition of atom, and it is a simple component. For example, the navigation from ACTUM Web. You see, it's composed out of 6 atoms. If we go further, we then can compose our molecules into organisms. This is organism, it's our header from ACTUM Web. It's composed out of logo atom, navigation molecule, then language switcher, and some link. And finally, we compose our organisms into final web page. Header organism, hero slider organism, and then the rest. So, with help of atomic design, we can compose websites out of reusable components. Again, this is how we can destructure it from top to bottom. So it was atomic design. Now, CSS methodologies. They tell us how to write CSS better. I'll speak mainly about BEM methodology, but they all share same principles, so it applies to other methodologies as well. Let's continue with our example of ACTUM web navigation. It's HTML, simple list with items and links, right? And it's CSS. Still, this is the old school approach. HTML first, see the structure, CSS later. It somehow copies the structure selectors, okay? Simple enough. Then, imagine we want to add another sub-navigation, a drop-down, for example. Well, we add a list, but this rule will mess with our new HTML. We don't want this. What can we do with this? Either we can add another complexity, we can say screw it, we will override it and never look back. But this didn't scale, again, because you are adding more and more complexity. And it will never end if you start working like this with CSS. Or you can adopt front-end development methodology like BEM. BEM is from Yandex, Aru. It's really famous. They beta tested it for us. They use it like 5 years in production. And they gave it for free, so we can use as well. It's more than just CSS, but let's focus on CSS as we are talking scalable CSS today. This is how it looks. Its name is BEM, block, element, modifier. Okay. Nav is a block, so it's a component. Then we have nav item, which is an element. So an element within a component, within a block. Then link, again element. Active link, it is a modifier, which means that it modifies state of element or appearance of element. And again, element of nav sub-navigation. You can see that it is simple and unified. We moved from rigid HTML structure copied into our CSS code into simple one-purpose classes and self-descriptive, as you can see. You can right away tell what this code does. You can see what's navigation, what are the items, and which one is active. Again, this is how it looks like in HTML. We apply those classes in the code. It might seem a little verbose, but it's for good. Because again, you can see at first glance what the code does, right? You can tell what component it is, right from the code when you implement it. Very good for developer experience, I would say. But most importantly, it is reusable. You see? You want to add other navigation to the footer. So you create another HTML and just apply the same CSS to the code, and it works right away, out of the box. So this is reusable, finally. CSS methodologies. Now, CSS preprocessors. I'm sure you know them. We use SASS in ACTUM, so I will cover this one. They are crucial for front-end development because they give us missing pieces in CSS, missing features. Again, our example of ACTUM web navigation, it's BEMish CSS, and it can be improved by the help of SASS, like this. Finally, we have variables on the top. They can be both global and local. As in this example, they are scoped to the navigation block. We have nesting there. As you can see, the ampersand characters. You can imagine them as this keyword in object-oriented programming. And we can even have conditions, loops, mathematical operations, mixins, and so on. So this was CSS web processors. Now style guides. Style guides can be generated right from our code. We don't need to do them by hand. We just need to pick some tool, as SC5, style guide, pattern lab from Brett Frost, creator of Atomic Design, or we can build our own. I think Honza Panchap is working on our own style guide, so you can approach him later and ask him about it. So this is our SASS code from the last example. I would say it's readable as is. You can say what it does and so on. But consider you want to show the component and how to use it even to other people, to non-developers, to content editors. That's for style guides are good. You just add documentation comments to the components in CSS, and you can benefit from style guide tool right away. It will do the heavy lifting for you. You will just start writing documentation comments in your code, and you will get style guide for free. This is how it looks like, a style guide. Nice style guide for everyone involved in the development. This was history, and let's move to the present. History and the tools we should use to do better. Now that we have a rich tool set, we can finally improve our scalability in CSS. You can remember the relationship between HTML and CSS. HTML first, CSS second. Not scalable example. I think today we should do it like this. It should be more balanced, right? Because a healthy relationship is balanced. Okay, both sides of the equation should get the same attention. They should benefit from each other to improve our practice, our websites. So, regarding structure, what's the present state? We moved from monolithic style sheets to separation of concerns. Okay? We no longer create these bloated files full of CSS. We started using CSS preprocessors, and with their help, we can compose our styles out of modules. So we can import variables, mixins, even third-party code like Bootstrap from NPM, typography, forms, and so on, even print style sheets. We no longer have hard-coded values in our CSS, again, thanks to CSS preprocessors. We can use variables, or we can go even further, and we can introduce a, for example, variable like supports IE8 and use it in a condition. So we will have a condition of supports IE8 and then features for IE8, which will be used if the support of IE8 is turned on by the variable. So this is structure today. It is still somewhat messy, but now we know how to do it better, and we finally moved on. Regarding reusability, we moved from complex selectors to reusable classes, thanks to methodologies like BAM from Yandex. Okay, again, our example, the poor one with a tightly coupled CSS to HTML. how can we do it better? Well, with BAM, it's simple. We just create article headline first, reusable class, and then apply it to whatever headline we want. We don't need to create a rule for every element. We just create one reusable and reuse it for all headlines. Or we can go even further and introduce so-called utility class, which can be then used not only for the headlines, but for all the elements on the page. For headings, paragraphs, inline elements, tables, forms, or even for the body or HTML tag. So our reusability no longer looks like this. We have a box of components and tools which we can use to improve our practice in front-end development. So this was reusability. Now, performance, our third pillar of reusable CSS. We moved from complex selectors to simple ones. So the less complex the selector is, the better the performance is in the end. You remember the example of browser rendering process. It starts with the rightmost one and continues upwards until it finds the element it should be styled. Okay, this is the poor example, slow one. Now with our reusable class, it looks like this, just one step. It needs to find just one class in one step. Much better. So this is regarding browser rendering performance. Regarding bandwidth speed, the download speed, sorry, this rule has 53 bytes. At scale, it can be, for example, 53 kilobytes, okay? Compared to our better code, this is much better. It's just an example, don't take me for a word with this, but yeah, it can improve, and it can be improved by this approach, definitely. So our performance no longer looks like this poor overloaded vehicle. It's more like this regular car. And I think in the future we will get even better with the help of HTTP2, which is being adopted as I speak. So performance. Now the last one, the fourth pillar of reusable scalable CSS. We moved from monolithic code to components and from comments in markup to Styleguides. We use atomic design, which is great for involvement of the whole development and design process as well. Because it's not only for front-end developers, it's also for UX designers, for content editors, and so on and so on. So it glues together the whole company during the development and design process. And it's great for documentation too. Components can be easily documented. Okay? Then we have our improved developer experience. It's self-descriptive as well, so it's documentation actually for developers, because you can see what the code does and how to use it, okay? And finally, we have our style guides. So we can hand them over to content editors or customers, and they can easily compare them to the website and see if it's as it should be. In the end, our scalability, the whole, is improved with help of raw structure, reusability, performance, and documentation. So it's well structured, reusable, performant, and maintainable. I hope I have been able to persuade you that Scalable CSS is a nice tool for us, that it can improve our practice and help our customers and make our customers happy, because in the end it's their websites, right, which will get better with our CSS. Let's see where we will get in the future. Maybe we will revisit our best practices in next 10 years as well, but now I can tell. So if you wanna know more, just go to the link. You can find a lot of articles there, even conference talks and whole frameworks. That's all from me today. Thank you, and hopefully see you again later. Any questions?
Maybe ideas for the future, what we should
Yeah.
expect in the nearest future.
It's a nice one.
CSS4.
I think there will be not only one direction. I think we will see more directions than just one. I think one is single page applications. There will be a movement of inline styles or CSS modules. You can write it down and Google it later. Maybe I can find it, but we can discuss it later. And I think in the means of presentational websites, there will be a movement of more low-level CSS frameworks. So more those utility classes we have seen, or I hope it will be. So those are two I think will be important in the future.
What about DevStack, Vojta? Our ACTUM DevStack, it's, I think,
Okay, yeah.
let's say, pretty difficult, pretty complex.
Mm-hmm.
Do you expect that the DevStack is going to be more simple or more...
I have no idea. Really. We started at Grant. Now we have Gulp. There is Webpack as well. Who knows? I don't really know.
Maybe in the future we will not be using SASS or less or something like this because of the CSS4, because CSS4 has some variables and stuff like this, but it's...
Yeah, I think CSS preprocessors will still be the thing because we will get variables, but then we will need another stuff in CSS. So preprocessors will cover them for us, and we will then wait for CSS adoption for another year. So I think preprocessors are more like a playground for CSS adoption.
Did you compare between differences between less and SASS before choose SASS?
You want me to compare differences?
Yeah. What
Well,
worse than less and SASS?
Okay, less and SASS, they are pretty the same, I would say. You just have a different syntax for extends and for imports, I would say. And I think you can do more in SASS. You can do proper conditions, proper loops, which is difficult unless you have to do it using mixins, I think. So the SASS is more mature, I would say.
But the performance is the same.
Well, yeah, because it compiles into CSS. So in the end, it's the same. But in the means of performance of compilation, I think they can differ, but I don't have a comparison right now.
I think SASS is a little bit quicker.
LibSASS. Yeah.
But it's important to mention that we've been using Less for a very long time, and we've decided to switch to SASS a few months ago, let's say. Months.
Yeah. We were persuaded by Bootstrap because it's moving to SASS.
And this stuff, this methodology from Yandex, it's only about the naming?
No,
Or
it's
there
about
some-
a lot more. You can, it's like their dev stack. You can use it to prototype whole websites. I think out of JSON files. So it covers the whole prototyping, creating of views, CSS, and so on. But we use just CSS part of it.
Okay.